Hello and welcome back to the shed. In today's video I'm going to make two different style of handles for some ferro rods. Hope you enjoy. What I got here, one design is like the one I've got here, which is just sort of carved out on all sides for your thumb to rest, but mainly on the two sides where your lanyard doesn't sit. It'll be recessed in about 5mm into the handle, and we'll just shape the rest of it using just a half-rounded rasp like I've got here. The length of the handle is about 40mm. The diameter of these ferro rods is about 9mm, so I'm going to be using a 9.5mm drill bit. So I'll bring you in and we'll get started on the first handle. So the bit of Tasmanian oak I've got here is 19mm by 19mm. It's just been squared off on the shooting board. First step is we come along like this, measure out our 40mm and strike a line right the way around. The next step before we start shaping is to mark the center here and drill the hole in for mounting that ferro rod. To find the center of a piece of square wood like this, so you get a straight edge, corner to corner, corner to corner. That gives us a center. Then before I drill, what I do is we need some sort of awl to mark the center. If you don't have an awl, you can just use a nail like I'm going to use today. And we bring that right down on top of that point. And what we get there, if you can see, is just a little dot in the middle, and that'll help guide our drill bit. Whether you're using a boarding bit or a flat bit, that's going to help. So now that's done, we're going to drill that hole in and then move on to the shaping. Okay, so what we're doing here is we'll line this drill bit up here, and you can eyeball down and to the side to try and get it straight, but the first thing you want to make sure you're doing is making sure that your workpiece is actually square in the vise and locked down so it can't move. Once that's good, you can actually just keep a square for whatever side you can't view, just as a little bit of a reference as you're drilling. We're not going in far here, so it's not really going to go off much. But we'll put it here, and you can eyeball where square is, and you'll just start drilling, and because it's rested on that little oar spot, it's not going to move. Now that I'm happy where that is, go ahead and drill that 5mm. So the next step now is that on this bottom edge, I'm going to bring it up about 3mm. I'm just going to strike a little mark here, just so I'm not going to take the curve that we're going to put in with the file right to the edge. I'll then chamfer the edges of this after and maybe mold it in there, but to start with, you just want a little bit of clearance. And on the top here, I'm going to come down about 10mm, and that's just to allow enough for drilling the hole that's going to go in the top here, which will go like sort of just on the inside of that line, and that just means that you're not going to be putting that right on the very edge of your piece of wood, which means it's less likely to want to split out if it did. See, we've got those lines right around now, and so after that I'm going to come to the center of these two lines so I know where to put the center of the curve that's going on here. And you can see we've got those lines all the way around, and now we're good to start shaping this. So I use the side here and establish that line. That just gives me a resting part for this round part of the sort of file just to grip and allow me to get started. And then I'm just going to ride it over this side a little bit, just to try and even it out. Now, obviously, if I had a wider ranging sweep on this round part, I could probably just go through much easier. But if you've got a smaller one like this, you just got to work the round until it gets where you want. So now it's a process of doing this same step right around, and then you can refine it once all four of them are just established like this. But you want to bear in mind you don't want to go in too far, and I probably don't want to go too much deep in this. I've already gone in about 3 or 4 mil. because you're doing that all the way around, you don't want to go right inside the handle and make the handle too small. So that's why you establish one, the next, follow it around, and once you've got it right the way around, you can decide how much you want to adjust it. You can see what we've got here so far. It's fairly well lined up, but we need to obviously lengthen this one here. So I'm going to slow the go round and just make sure that they all line up with one another. I'm pretty happy with this now, and obviously a lot of chamfering is going to happen here. But the next step, what I normally do is actually drill this hole now, and then we'll go ahead and we'll chamfer everything once we've chopped it off. Going to try and sight it and keep it square again. And you just want to get a light chamfer on the hole. Chook. Line it up on here. I'm going to use a gent saw, just a fine tooth saw. Straight into that line that we squared around on the top. Now we can go ahead and shape the top of this with a file. Now these edges here, I'm just going to just break those corners while I'm filing to stop it smashing out further. And we're just working that into as much of an arc as we can. And now I've done the rough work, I'm going to move on to a fine file to work this, and then I might just move it on a piece of sandpaper to finish that off. So just simply smoothing all of those rough marks out with a much finer file. Don't forget about these edges here, you want them nice and smooth. So I take quite a large chamfer on this corner now. Now we need to move over and work on the bottom. And we don't need to use a heavy file for this, we're just going to chamfer these corners. Again, a couple of millimeters. Now that we've got to this stage, we can take it out of here and we can just work every sharp edge with a little bit of sandpaper to round it all off so it's nice and smooth in the hand. What I've got here is just a piece of 240 grit sandpaper, and you're literally just going to work all the sharp edges. Now this handle's all shaped up and ready to go and be glued on. We're going to go ahead and make the second handle type. It's going to be very quick, very easy, very basic. For the second one, I'm using a piece of jarrah here. That measures about 25 mil wide. I'm going to come up 30 mil, and this is going to be where the little thumb divot goes. Now, I'm then going to come up about another centimetre past that, and that's going to allow us to put the lanyard in here. What I'm going to be using is a carving gouge. Now this is not a particularly large carving gouge. This was from a cheap set that I got from Record Power. It works fairly well as long as you keep it sharp and stropped. So I always have a strop nearby when I'm working with these, so you don't have to put them back on the stones. And we're going to go ahead and carve a little divot out of the side. It's a simple process, coming from both angles until you've got the divot as deep as you want. Now this would be a lot easier if I had a wider sweep gouge, so the sweep is the angle, and you'd be able to take a neater swipe in one go, but if you've got a smaller one like I do here, you just slowly work your way up to the size you want. So what we've got here is enough to just get the small part of the thumb in there, like the main part, and enough so you can hold on to it so it doesn't move. Now we've got to do the same on the other side. I like to get a little bit of sandpaper in here and just smooth it all out before we move on to drilling some holes. And with this style, obviously you don't have to drill the hole straight up at the start. And yes, that was smoking quite a lot. It's a very hard timber, especially going into the end grain. And you can see we've got this deep enough to hold that ferro rod now. So we're going to drill this hole up the top here for the lanyard. And now, we just need to cut off and shape the top of this. I'm working right across the face like this. I'm just going to chamfer these corners. We can do a little bit of work just rounding these corners a little bit. And as you can see, all these edges are now nicely rounded off. Give it a little bit of sandpaper just to shape all that in, and we're good to put it on. So now we're ready to attach both these handles. I'm just going to mix up a little bit of 5-minute epoxy. This 5-minute epoxy happens to be from Loctite. It doesn't really matter what 5-minute epoxy you use. I need to mix up very little epoxy because these holes are quite tight. I'm just mixing it up on the back of an old piece of sandpaper here. You can mix it up with whatever. Make sure you give it a good stir, because like all epoxies, it needs to have all that hardener in there. Now all I'm going to do is just roll the ferro rod in that epoxy and then push it into the handle like so. And that little bit of stuff that's squeezed out there, we want to just wipe that away. I'm just trying to keep it off the ferro rod as much as possible. The finish for these is just going to be a little bit of paste wax. We'll have to waterproof them a little bit because they're designed to be used in the outdoors. You could put any finish you want on them, but a quick little oil finish or wax finish is probably going to be the best. And it's quick and easy to reapply if you need to. Head, rub it on, rub it off, and we're complete. So there you have it, folks. As you can see, it's not that difficult to make some little handles like these. Some of them have a little more delicate work than others, and depending on the timber you use, the outlook's going to be a little bit different. I personally prefer the second handle we made because it's quick and easy, and I find that a little more comfortable to use. So if you like this video and you'd like to see more videos like this or anything hand tool related, please consider liking and subscribing below. And if you'd like to continue to support me to allow me to keep making these videos, please consider contributing to me on Patreon. It really does help me out as I'm not monetized on YouTube yet. We're slowly getting there, so I'd like to thank you for all of your support, especially my patrons on Patreon. Bye for now.